So, of course, we start with our big story here today. Jim Jordan, once again, not getting enough votes on the House floor to become Speaker. The firebrand Ohio lawmaker and supporter of former President Trump actually garnered less support today than he did yesterday. Our Rachel Scott caught up with Jordan after the vote. Take a listen.
How do you convince some of these holdouts to support you?
Because I think it's for the good of the country if we come together and get the Congress open. I mean, I've said that the whole reason I ran is I thought I was kind of uniquely positioned where I could hopefully bring the team together. If I didn't think that, I wouldn't have ran.
All right, so joining us now is Republican Congressman from Tennessee, Tim Burchett. Congressman, thank you so much for being here with us. So again, he lost in the second round of vote. He actually received less votes than he did the day before. And we've just now learned that the next vote for this is going to take place tomorrow. And we were just told by one of our Capitol Hill reporters that it doesn't seem like there's a lot of closed-door meetings right now, that maybe he's not having these meetings to garner more support for tomorrow. What do you know?
Well, you know about as what I know. I usually get my information from the press, and then the conference usually sends me something about a minute later. So y'all have pretty good sources. But what I do know Jim Jordan. I know he's still working, and I don't believe that he will pull us in for a vote unless he's getting closer or if he's had some success. What that may be, I don't know. But we've gone, we went 15 rounds for Kevin McCarthy, so I dare say that Jim Jordan could hold up under that pressure as well, but I don't know what some of my colleagues are thinking.
All right. Well, also, we heard from Republican Senator Mitt Romney yesterday, and he went on to say that Jim Jordan is inexperienced at passing legislation, but then he said he's, quote, able to make a lot of noise. So what is he talking about there when he's talking about noise, and what good things do you think that Jordan brings to this Republican conference?
Well, Senator Romney, he's one of the types that he's like when I was a kid, the guy that'd throw a rock over the fence and then run home behind his mama's skirt. And that's exactly what he's doing. He's not running again, and he knows that. Everybody gets tough when they're not having to look at the voters again. And there's no one more popular in American politics in the grassroots than Jim Jordan. There's no question. But, what's in his heart, I don't know. I don't know what Jim wants to do. I don't know if he's going to bring us to the floor again or not. It's totally up to him. But with Mitt Romney, I just say it's a grain of salt. He was unsuccessful in getting to the White House. He's been discouraged since then, and people in my area at least aren't very fond of him.
I have to tell you, though, Congressman, that's a sentiment that I've heard from a number of current and former Republicans at this time. And clearly he's not getting the votes that he needs. But also, ABC is hearing from sources that Hakeem Jeffries is floating this idea of elevating a temporary speaker for at least a limited time so the House could get back to passing legislation. We're also hearing that Republicans might consider, giving Speaker Pro Tem more authority in the meantime. So what are your thoughts on either of those ideas?
Well, my friend Hakeem Jeffries is the original election denier. He denied that President Trump was a legitimately elected president and said that over a half a dozen times, at least publicly. So, it's with a grain of salt and having a shared type of thing. I mean, we would have to give so much. I think we ought to just stay here and vote, ma'am. We have a bad habit in Congress of pushing things like continued resolutions 45 days, and then we come in here the first day and rush up to the floor to name 2 post offices, and then we go to the 43rd day, and then we start working on it. I think we ought to just stay here and not deal with that. I know a lot of the arguments are that we need to take care of Israel. Well, Israel gets $3.6 billion, a year, pretty much on auto check from the American taxpayers. Our own State Department has stated that they're pretty well set with armaments. We've sent, I think, close to 12 of our ships over there. Our largest one possibly in the world, the Gerald R. Ford aircraft carrier group, is there in the Mediterranean. And so I'm not sure exactly why we need to do something like that could even be constitutionally suspect. So I think we ought to stay here and just keep voting and just keep working on the problem and quit going home and doing these 2-hour days. It's kind of ridiculous, and I know we do it mostly out of tradition in Congress, but frankly, ma'am, I'd like to see us get to work up here.
I I hear you. And on that note, President Biden said that he plans now on asking for yet more support for Israel. He called the support package he wants, unprecedented. So what is your thought on that, knowing that this aid, the support that he wants to ask for also includes aid for Ukraine and Taiwan as well?
I would be a little suspect of anything going to Ukraine. If it's such a great deal, ma'am, that's one of the reasons we're in the mess we're in right now. Let's just do individual bills. If it's so great, let it stand on its own. I could clearly vote for something for Israel, but I would not be in favor of voting for anything else to Ukraine. We've given them basically $114 billion unchecked dollars. The president, I saw, we gave him a few hundred more million just recently without congressional approval. I don't know why they would need congressional approval if he's been able to do so much for Ukraine, a country we basically have no relationships with, versus a country like Israel, which is a dear and trusted ally of ours.
And Congressman, we're hearing some strong condemnation from Republicans, both in the House and the Senate, against these two progressive House Democrats regarding their recent tweets. They were yesterday about this Gaza hospital explosion. We went on to see these protests at the Capitol today. Can you describe that environment for us?
Well, it was a little hostile. They told us not to walk out there. We had a notice on our computers that said there's I believe a First Amendment event going on where, of course, when it's conservatives, I think they call them protests. So, and of course, I went out there. If they'd have told us to stay in, I probably would have gone out. If they told us to go out, I would have stayed in. But I went out to check it out. They were just loud. There's a lot of college kids. I would prefer to call a lot of limousine liberals out there, and a lot of folks there really just misdirected. They're praising Hamas and condemning Israel and calling for a ceasefire. And nobody was calling for a ceasefire when those poor Israelis were getting butchered in their own homes. Holocaust survivors, little kids, women raped, just the most horrendous things you can think of, and yet here they are in the freest nation on God's earth. They're allowed to protest, and I would stand up for their right to protest. But dadgummit, I don't have to agree with them, and I do not agree with them on what they did. And so I think over 100 were arrested, and they did exactly what they tried to do. They tried to stop traffic, and they'll go home all puffed up about all the great things they did. But the reality is they're backing a terrorist organization. We need to give Israel a wide path and let them take care of it. And I suspect there's going to be some Old Testament type of justice going on in Gaza, and it's going on right now. And a lot of misdirection in the media. I was disappointed to hear that they said that the Israelis had hit a missile on a Christian hospital, when in fact it was Hamas had misdirected one of their lame missiles that didn't make it over the border. So, a lot of kids are misdirected. They got a lot of anger pent up, and they're in America and they're allowed to do it.
I appreciate your time, and as we know, the finger pointing on what happened with that hospital, the U.S. has not been able to confirm who is responsible at this time. Tim Burchett, thank you so much for your time, Congressman. We really appreciate it. Thank you. I want to bring our big story now to our panel, of course. And joining us today is our ABC News contributor and SiriusXM radio host, Mike Muse, ABC News contributor and NPR White House correspondent, Asma Khalid, and former Republican chairman of the House Homeland Security Committee, John Katko, and former Democratic senator from North Dakota, ABC News political contributor as well, Heidi Heitkamp. Thank you all for being here with us. And Heidi, we'll start with you. Does all this speakership drama between the Republican conference offer Democrats a chance here to pounce, given that they are all falling right in line with Hakeem Jeffries?
Well, I thought it was interesting when the congressman said among the grassroots, Jim Jordan is enormously popular. First off, the grassroots don't know who Jim Jordan is. And I would venture a guess that he's probably the least popular Republican congressman among independents and Democrats, and probably a lot of Republicans, including the 22 that voted against him. I mean, you've got to know when to exit and look for a consensus candidate. And Jim Jordan is not a consensus candidate. But, if you're the Republican Party, if you're the Democratic Party, there's an old saying in politics, when your opponent's shooting himself in the foot, you don't take the gun away. And the politics of this are horrible for the Republican Party. They're trying to convince us that they can, in fact, govern the country when they can't govern themselves. And the reality is that right now, the most powerful Republican group is is in the House of Representatives. They are the Republican Party, and they look completely dysfunctional.
And Asma, to you, you heard what the congressman just said about aid to Israel and Ukraine. So what can you tell us about the path forward on that?
The path forward is really murky, certainly without a Speaker of the House. We do know that President Biden intends to deliver remarks from the Oval Office at the White House tomorrow evening. And as you heard the president say today himself, he is looking for a, quote, unprecedented security package for Israel. The White House is also looking for additional aid for Ukraine. I would say that right now, though, the challenge is that without a Speaker of the House, there is really no path forward towards getting that aid money.
Yeah, and John, to you, Jordan has also pushed for a vote, perhaps on this resolution empowering Speaker pro tem Patrick McHenry, but we don't know if the GOP leadership would agree on that. And you clearly heard there, John, from the congressman, he said he would rather just sort of stay at work and vote and get this thing done with.
How can you stay at work when you don't have a plan? It's like a farmer who lit a match to his barn and burnt his barn down because he didn't like his barn, but had no plan to replace the barn. That's what Tim and the other 7 did. And there's no sign of regret of the chaos and the infighting and the damage that they've caused the party. But the fact of the matter is, there is no plan and there is no clear frontrunner. And Jim Jordan is highly likely not going to get it. So now we're back to square one again when we have the crises both nationally and internationally. And it's really a very unfortunate situation. And it's the worst type of poor leadership and poor selfish moves that some of these politicians made in Washington in my memory.
And Mike, as I bring it to you, I just was handed some new information here, so I'll pass it along. Speaker pro tem Patrick McHenry has gone on to say that he plans to give Jordan, quote, as long as he needs to give enough votes to be elected Speaker. And then he went on to say that we don't have plans to hold a GOP conference meeting right now. So, Mike, I mean, they're not even going to have a meeting. He's not even going to try to garner more votes.
Yeah, just that news that you just gave to us just now just shows the peril that the Republican Party is in. There's a conversation out there that Representative McHenry could have expanded powers of his Speaker pro tem in order to get the business of the day addressed, such as the aid package to Ukraine, such as the aid package to Israel, such as humanitarian package to the people of Gaza in the Gaza Strip. Also, too, as well as we begin to think about our federal government close to running out of money in about 30 days. So much business needs to be done, Kana, that the infighting Republican Party doesn't give the American public faith that they can even reach a bipartisan agreement to fund any of those measures that I just outlined if they can't even agree on a consensus on who should lead their own party. So I think we have a larger challenge ahead of us.
Shaking your head there, John Katko. I know you're disappointed.
It's very much so, and it is the worst in the Republican Party. And the thoughtlessness of what they're doing is amazing to me. No team effort at all.
All right, well, we'll see how this plays out. The next vote again tomorrow. Mike Muse, Asma Khalid, John Katko, and Heidi Heitkamp. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.